Every month, financial journalists breathlessly report consumer spending data. This bit of economic info gets lots of attention, at least we are told, because consumption is 2/3 of GDP and supposedly drives the economy. I love to shop as much as the next person, probably more, but this analysis is wrong. I'm Hiwa Algabandian of the American Enterprise Institute, and in this Economics 101 video for the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, we're going to take a closer look at how economic statistics are misinterpreted, and we'll learn how looking at numbers from the wrong perspective leads people to incorrectly support bad policies such as Keynesian economics. Let's start by looking at the latest full-year GDP statistics from 2009, which come from the Bureau of Economic Analysis at the Commerce Department. These are the economic numbers that get the most attention, and you can see that personal consumption is the lion's share of GDP. So it's somewhat understandable that people think that personal consumption is the key to the economy. But here's something most people don't know. The flip side of gross domestic product is gross domestic income, or GDI. Like GDP, GDI is comprised of several components, and some of the big ones are employee compensation, corporate profits, and small business income. The simple way to think about these numbers is that GDP measures how national income is allocated and GDI measures how national income is earned. Why does this matter? Let's return to the issue of economic growth. This topic is getting lots of attention, both in Washington and around the world, because economies are not growing fast enough to generate higher living standards and good job creation. So how do we make that happen? Politicians think the answer is boosting consumer spending and personal consumption. Does this make sense? Let's put the GDP chart back on the screen. Assume politicians do a Keynesian stimulus and borrow money from private capital markets and spend the money in ways that increase government consumption, increase personal consumption, or some combination of the two. As you can see, all that's happened is that the allocation of GDP has changed. There's no increase. To be fair, the analysis does change a bit if we assume that politicians are borrowing the money from China or other overseas sources. Measuring this involves some of the technical differences between gross national product and gross domestic product, but all that really matters is that it is possible to temporarily increase overall American consumption if we're willing to surrender some of our future income and interest payments to foreign lenders. That's not a very wise idea, unless you're one of those people who thinks it's smart to use your retirement fund to finance a trip to Vegas. But imagine if policymakers focused on gross domestic income rather than gross domestic product. What if they understood that we needed policies that expanded the amount of national income that is earned? In other words, what if their goal was to increase things such as employee compensation, corporate profits, and small business income? Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I think they'd be much more likely to focus on pro-growth policies such as lower tax rates, reducing the burden of government spending, trade liberalization, deregulation, and good monetary policy. And remember, if we increase gross domestic income, that automatically means we have more gross domestic product. Let's conclude by making an important observation about GDP. Even though this video is designed to shift people's attention to gross domestic income, GDP nonetheless is quite important because future economic growth to a significant extent is governed by how much of today's income is allocated to investment. In simple terms, it is very difficult to enjoy more prosperity in the future unless we set aside some of today's income to finance tomorrow's growth. This doesn't mean consumption is bad. Adam Smith noted that the ultimate purpose of production is consumption. But it does suggest that politicians shouldn't be trying to artificially boost consumption at the expense of investment. Not only does that not stimulate the economy today, it also may reduce economic output in the future. On behalf of the Center for Freedom and Prosperity, thanks for taking the time to understand why the politicians in Washington and elsewhere around the world are misguided. If we want growth and prosperity, good economic policy means producing more income, not artificially diverting a greater share of existing income to consumption. I'm Hiwa Algabandian. Send this Economics 101 video to everyone you know. If people know the truth, politicians will be more likely to do the right thing.